Even though I've been coaching for many years and am an MCC, there's something I sometimes forget to do. And every time I forget, I regret it. In this video, I want to talk about contracting and how we set agreements with our clients and use those agreements as a dynamic part of the coaching process. I think most coaches know that when they start to have their conversation with clients, often these really focus on the superficial or the transactional parts of coaching. Like, what's my role and what's your role and how many hours are we going to work together? And that's important, but it's not sufficient. If we think about the metaphor of an iceberg, the visible part, 1/11th, that's things like, how much are you paying for this coaching? What time are we going to meet? Those are in the visible part of the iceberg. In the invisible part are things about the relationship and how we feel and about safety and about belonging and about the connection that we have together. When we're setting agreements, if you look at the International Coaching Federation competency, it talks about establishing and maintaining agreements. And in the competency definition, almost everything there is logistical. It's about goals, it's about roles, but it's not about emotions. And so one of the tools that's going to be invaluable for you in the coaching process is your empathy. First, let me talk about the idea that contracting is a process that we use in coaching. And contracting means both establishing the actual contract, could be written or not, which defines the terms of the work together. Contracting also refers to the process of clarifying the agreement that we have together. And, often it sounds like, what do you want to work on today? And the challenge is that sometimes clients don't really know the answer. Or maybe they know the answer, but it's hard for them to say it. And so sometimes they dance around and they say, I want my workplace team to, get along better. So let's work on that. And if you think you now have an agreement, you're making a mistake because you don't know what the client really needs and what's driving that idea and what's going to actually help them. One of the things that I've found is that when I do a good job in this developing the agreement, that I'm really clear and the client's really clear. And sometimes we're done coaching just from that. They don't really need more than that because in that process of getting the agreement really clear, they've learned what they need to learn. And now they're able to go and solve the problem by themselves. Now, that might sound terrible to some of you, that you're going to lose your client after your first meeting. But I'll tell you, those clients where you can really help them in 1 or 2 sessions, they're going to be loyal referrers and send other people to you. I mentioned that sometimes I forget to do this. And what happens is I end up having a really nice conversation with my client. And it can be super positive and it might even be helpful. But neither of us is really clear why we're doing this. And from a business perspective, particularly because I work with a lot of organizations, it's very important to me that when I'm working with a client, that I'm delivering value and that we're staying focused on the goals that they have and that the goals that the organization has. And so just taking this moment to step back and check in on the focus, it helps us clarify the conversation, but it also becomes an essential tool to support the whole coaching session to be moving someplace that matters. So when you're setting the agreement, instead of thinking about it as something you do at the beginning of the coaching session, think about it as a process that is a process of coaching. It's not in the way of coaching. As you go through this process, you and your client are getting more clear. And your emotions and your client's emotions are going to help you figure out what's really going on, not just at the surface level. Okay, so your client has said, I want to make things work better in the team. And you might come back and ask, all right, well, that's a big project. So within that project, what's the piece you want to work on? And maybe they say, I want to be more brave in bringing up issues and talking about stuff we need to talk about. The next question you can try is, as your coach, how can I support you in that? What will be useful for you to help you take that step? There's an important idea here that the client actually already has the answer inside. And actually in this contracting process and in this clarifying process, what you're already doing is you're helping your client figure out what really matters to them. When you go through this process, what you might find is that as you're continuing to talk about their challenges and goals, that they start going down rabbit trails. And they say, well, let me tell you an example. And they start talking about this situation. You might find sometimes that you're confused and you're thinking, what does this have to do with the goal they told me? What happens when you notice your own confusion? You notice that sense of like, oh, this is drifting. And you recontract. You go back to that agreement. You're inviting the client to refocus, and you're bringing the conversation to a deeper level. And it's actually your empathy that's helping you get this message about what's going on underneath the waterline and to tap in a bit to the heart of the iceberg. So this is a great opportunity for you to say, I just want to interrupt you for one moment. And I'd like to come back to the goal you've set earlier. You talked about being more brave. Help me connect the dots. What is it that you're sharing with me? How does that support this idea of figuring out how to be more brave? Or, I'm feeling a little lost. Thinking about the goal you said earlier, do you still want to stay focused on that question of being more brave? So, this story you're telling, connect the dots for me. Help me figure out how this situation fits with that being more brave goal. And you're not telling the client that they're wrong or that they're, off on a tangent. You're inviting the client to help you figure out, what does this have to do with the goal? And sometimes they'll say, I don't know, I've been on a tangent. Let's start over. And sometimes they'll say, oh no, this is exactly the issue that I'm trying to get to. And they'll help you figure out why that's the issue. And other times they'll say, well, actually, maybe being more brave isn't the real need. Maybe what I really need is to listen more deeply. At the end of the session, if you've done this well, it's going to be really easy to talk about action steps because you've been building all along to where they're trying to go, and they have the resources inside to get there. Many coaches love this question at the end of a coaching session. What are you taking away from this conversation? This contracting process is essential in coaching. That it's not something we do before we get to the coaching, but working on the agreement is actually at the core of coaching. And that empathy and tuning in to the emotional dynamics that are happening beneath the surface are clues that can help us make more meaningful agreements. And finally, that this recontracting idea, this coming back and checking in, helps us use the contract, use the agreement to move the conversation forward and into action. I would love to hear in the comments what's important for you in this conversation and what's going to be useful for you and what happens when you try it. And if you have more questions that come up about using your emotional intelligence in coaching, I hope you will ask questions in the comments, and we'd love to share some more videos with you on this topic.